Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're with us, and we can talk about Election from 1999, Alexander Payne's second major feature after Citizen Ruth. And I will give you some background on him, and we'll talk about some of the characters and what happened to some of the people involved in the creative process of the movie, because almost everybody had some really bad things that they either did or happened to them. So in real life. So I'll cover that as well. And then some of the films that they've gone on to make afterwards, we'll talk as well. And I want to get into some of the craziness of the movie and the behind the scenes stuff as well. So Election came out in 1999, and it was a pretty wild year. I'll get into that in a little bit too. But in Rotten Tomatoes, it was given a 92. The consensus was, Election successfully combines dark humor and intelligent writing in this very witty and enjoyable film. Kind of oversimplifies it, but okay. It's a succinct one-line quote. IMDb gives it a 7.2, which for IMDb is quite high. The budget, and I read differing accounts of the budget, it was anywhere from $8.5 million to $25 million. What it did at the box office was 17.2 million. Which, you know, if it was 25 million, that's not so good. If it was the 8.5 million, then it was real good. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you saw the opening credits, the main company that produced it. Did you see anyone remember what it was? MTV Productions. Remember MTV back in the 80s and 90s? They were still trying to stay relevant in the 90s and produced a few movies. This was one of them. Now, the director, Alexander Payne, also wrote the screenplay with Jim Taylor, based on a novel also called Election by Thomas Perrotta that came out in 1988. And Payne acquired the rights in 97. Let's see. Okay. So Alexander Payne went on to win the Oscar in 2005 for Best Adapted Screenplay for Sideways, which he also won the BAFTA award, the British Academy Awards. And anyone see Sideways? Okay, a few, almost half. I would recommend it if you get a chance. It's very funny. It's a road trip movie with Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church, and Sandra Oh, who plays one of the romantic interests. She's now, Ann and I were just watching The Chair on Netflix, which is a sort of a dramedy. It's funny, but it's also serious, about an institution of higher education. And Sandra Oh gets appointed to chair the English department. It's pretty funny, but it's also serious. Anyway, back then when she made Sideways, she and director Alexander Payne started a romantic relationship, ended up getting married, and about a year and a half, 2 years later, they ended up getting divorced. Let's see. He also won for Best Adapted Screenplay for The Descendants with George Clooney. It was good. I frankly thought Sideways was better and more clever, but he also got a lot of praise in 2013 and 14 for Nebraska, which was he was nominated for Best Director as well as Screenplay. He was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for Election, but he didn't win. But this was his second feature after Citizen Ruth, which starred Laura Dern. He also he won the Golden Globe for Best Screenplay for Sideways and for About Schmidt. About Schmidt starred Jack Nicholson, and that was in 2003. And National Board of Review, The Descendants and Sideways won Best Adapted Screenplay as well. Now, interestingly enough, he got nominated, Alexander Payne, for a Razzie Award. Anyone know what the Razzies are? It's an award for the worst. So he got nominated for the worst screenplay in 2006 for a comedy called I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, where these two guys need to be married for various reasons, and they decide they're good friends, they're going to marry each other. And it's supposed to be a comedy, but not so well received. Okay, so now Alexander Payne became a fan of Thomas Perrotta's novel, and he got the rights in January of '97. The novel was inspired by two key events. The first was the the 92 presidential election, which is interesting because it says the novel was originally written in 88. So I don't understand that, a little conflicting, but that's what it said. But Ross Perot entered as a third-party candidate, which was echoed by the Tammy Metzler character, Paul's sister, the adopted lesbian, as she was noted in the film a couple times. The second was a 1992 incident at a high school in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, in which a pregnant student was elected homecoming queen, but the staff announced a different winner and burned the ballots to cover up the fact that she actually won. So that was the other event. And obviously you can see the real parallels in this film with that event. So there's a number of stylized techniques in its storytelling. They use freeze frames, flashback, voiceovers, and that allows sections of the narrative to be delivered from the points of view of several of the main characters. And I'm gonna actually, I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm gonna try to show you something I thought was kind of cool. I hope this works. Can you, hang on, let me take off the background and it should work then. I wanna be able to show you this picture, how it changes. So 1 second, and I'm gonna remove the background. Okay, let's try it now. Okay, let's see. Okay, there you go. Can you see that pretty clearly?
Yeah.
All right. You see where the focus is? It's on Tracy's face.
Mhm.
This is, wait a minute. Yeah, no, this is a couple seconds later. The focus isn't on the face anymore. It's on the cupcake.
Right.
Which says, pick flick, but if you really notice the cupcakes, you can see them better here, hopefully. It's really not flick that they say when you look at some of the cupcakes. I don't know if people picked up on it in the movie, but the L and the I kind of come very close together, and it looks like 4 letters instead of 5.
Like you.
So, I don't know if you picked up on it, but anyway. And then, of course, there's a nice photo of Tracy that she had one of her friends take a picture of her as she was casting her ballot. But the focus changing, I thought that was kind of cool in the way they did that. A little shift in focus, a little directorial technique. And he's kind of famous for doing some things like that. I also thought having Matthew Broderick in the film helped him a lot because he has that quirky way of running. It's a very nerdish kind of way of running that he has, and that kind of fit the character well and played into the script nicely. So the film was primarily shot on location around Omaha, Nebraska. If you saw the license plates, they did say Nebraska, in the fall of 1997. And one of the high schools actually portrayed the fictitious Carver High School, and many of the background extras were actually enrolled students. Some other scenes were filmed in a mall and in other areas in the aquarium. But they actually got the character of Paul Metzler from the school. This was his first movie, and there's 2 different accounts of how he got the part as Paul. Chris Klein was the actor, who, if you ever saw any of the American Pie comedy movies, he was one of the 3 or 4 stars in the whole series, and he was a big star. But this was his very first movie, and one account was they were taking extras, and someone picked him out of the crowd, and the casting director, and said, "We want you to audition for this part." Another was he just auditioned for the part, but he was actually at the high school where they were doing all the filming. So he got the part of Paul Metzler, and it was Chris Klein, and launched his career. I'm going to also I want to talk about Matthew Broderick a little bit, and Reese Witherspoon, because they've had pretty fascinating characters since this as well. But let me go back to one thing first, something kind of interesting. I want to read off a list of names of films and see if you can guess what they all have in common. Eyes Wide Shut, The Matrix, The Blair Witch Project, Run, Lola, Run, Boys Don't Cry, Fight Club, Office Space, Toy Story 2, The Insider, The Green Mile, and The Spy Who Shagged Me. Oh, and The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Election and American Beauty. Does anyone know what all those movies have in common? Raise a hand, anyone? No? They all came out in 1999. All those movies, really terrific year for movies. And the one that won the Oscar for Best Picture, I don't know if anyone remembers, it was American Beauty, which I thought was a terrific film, kind of dark, pretty dark, but terrific film. Okay, so now I wanted to get into the main people, creatives behind this film, because they all had something bad happen to them, or they did stuff. So Alexander Payne, the director, in 2018, well, first off, in 2017, Metacritic ranked Alexander Payne as the #2 best director of the 21st century. I haven't seen him that high on any other list, but that's a pretty big compliment. So, and then of course, the year after, the actress Rose McGowan was interviewed by Ronan Farrow and said he committed statutory rape of her back when she was 15 and he was 28. His response was they had a consensual relationship and said they met when she was, quote, over the age of consent. And he wrote in Deadline Hollywood, while I cannot allow false statements about events 29 years ago to go uncorrected, I will continue to wish only the best for Rose. So that was his bad thing. Matthew Broderick's was actually worse. Anyone remember Matthew Broderick's bad incident? Rebecca? Yep. You got to unmute yourself. Go ahead. Still got to just hit the unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was involved with her at the time, but he had that car crash, and two people got killed.
Exactly.
I guess during the filming of this, right?
No, it was after this. It was after this. He was in Ireland with a rented BMW.
Oh,
He
okay.
killed a woman and her mother
Right.
because he basically forgot the streets were different. You know, right side of the street, left side of the
Right.
street.
He was on the other side of the road, I read.
Right. Now, Reese Witherspoon, she had probably the lightest problem out of everybody that I'm going to talk about here. But she was arrested for disorderly conduct in 2013 and pleaded no contest to obstruction of justice because she was with her husband who was driving and he got pulled over for a DUI. And she was trying to obstruct the officer from arresting him. So she was even arrested. Now, Chris Klein, Paul Metzler, again, as I said, he went on to play in all the American Pie movies. He played a serial killer in the TV show The Flash, and more recently, he was in Netflix's Sweet Magnolias. But back in 2005, he was arrested for drunk driving. And again in 2010, after which he checked himself into a 30-day alcohol addiction program. Now, one more. Jessica Campbell, Tammy Metzler, Paul's sister in the movie, the lesbian presidential candidate in the movie. She died unexpectedly at her home in Portland, Oregon in December of 2020. She was only 38. She had quit acting years ago and became a naturopathic physician, had made the rounds during the day. Everything was fine. She goes home, sees her husband and kids, and in the bathroom, something happened and she died suddenly. The other semi-major character in the film was the principal, Walt Hendricks. Nothing bad with him, so that's the good news. Phil Reeves is the actor. And I'm thinking, I know I've seen him before. Well, sure enough, after election, Alexander Payne liked him so much, he put him in his next 2 films. Phil Reeves was in About Schmidt and also in Sideways. And he had a big role, if you ever watched Veep with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. He played her frequent adversary and became vice president. He was a senator, frequently running opposition to her, which he tried to accomplish. He would sabotage or blackmail her to get something. And then he became her vice president. So, and they sort of were going to have a romantic relationship. I don't remember what happened with that. So anyway, now Matthew Broderick, he was famous way back in 1983 when he was in War Games. Then, of course, he made Ferris Bueller's Day Off in '86, and he was off to the races after that. He was in Glory in '89 with Denzel Washington, the Civil War movie. The Freshman with Robert De Niro in 1990. And he was the voice of Simba in The Lion King. And of course, funny Matthew Broderick story that Anne may remember, when years ago we took the kids to New York to see a show on Broadway, and at the table, well, not at the table next to it, we're eating at this restaurant called the Angus in middle of Broadway. It was for many, many years. It was a fixture, and the theater people would go, and the theater producer actually showed it to me. And we're having, I don't know if it was lunch or dinner, but all of a sudden Matthew Broderick walks in, goes into a closet and takes out a bicycle. And he's getting ready to leave. And I say, kids, do you guys know who that is? And they look at me and they look at him and they go, no. And I said, Ferris Bueller's Death. But our kids were little. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, they hadn't seen it yet. And I go, Inspector Gadget. And they go, oh my God. And they ran over to get his autograph and everything. And he was not thrilled because I think he was in a bit of a hurry, but he took time just to say hi and signed the autograph, and then he took off. So, but it was kind of funny. And of course I said, mental note, got to show them Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And we watched that a little bit later. He was also famous for The Producers, which he did on Broadway and in the movies. And he had a few movies since then, but none were as big as that. That was kind of a big one for him. Now, Reese Witherspoon is a graduate of Stanford University. In 2019, she was on the Forbes list of the 100 most powerful women, not just in Hollywood, 100 most powerful women. She was the highest paid actress for a few years, making between $15 and $20 million a movie. She also made a lot as a producer, and she was in The Man on the Moon when she was 15 in 1991. That was the movie about Andy Kaufman with, was it Jim Carrey played him, I think? Yeah. Election, of course, and then Legally Blonde in 2001, and she was off to the races. Walk the Line, she won the Oscar for Best Actress in 2005. Wild, she was the Best Actress nominee in 2014, playing Cheryl Strayed. And of course, Big Little Lies, she produced, and she was it was a Primetime Emmy winner for Outstanding Limited Series on HBO, Big Little Lies from 2017 to 2019. Right. Okay, so now some viewing notes I had. Did anyone notice the significance of the apples? You see the recurring theme of the apples? It starts with the very first time where he wins the Teacher of the Year award, and they show him, and he says, narrating, he said, oh, for the third time, it was a record.
Goes to the refrigerator and takes out an apple.
Right. There's a lot of apples throughout the movie, but even on his award as best teacher, there's an apple right on the top of the award. But yeah, he takes it out of the refrigerator. Somebody else passes an apple. It's definitely a theme. And I think it just has to go with, of course, you know, the biting of the forbidden fruit. And that's, of course, the downfall of him. And then you go back with Tracy, with his friend Dave Novotny, and how it only sabotages Dave, and she is totally unaffected, and everyone in the school is oblivious to it, except, of course, Matthew Broderick. And of course, Paul was asked his favorite fruit. And first he says apples, and then no, pears, well, bananas. And then of course, later there's a scene where there's an apple right in front of him and he reaches past it to grab a banana. I don't know if you noticed that, but I just thought it was kind of funny. And then Tammy, the character of Tammy is kind of interesting. We have to talk about her. And I know somebody previously said they wanted to discuss Tammy. I'll open it up. Anyone want to talk about Tammy and their thoughts on her? Nancy, you just got to unmute yourself.
Here we are.
I thought Tammy was one of the most despicable. I mean, she was so, first of all, she was totally OCD. And she had it was all, remember she started with the definition of moral and ethics, which she had neither morals or ethics.
No, I'm talking about Tammy, Paul's sister.
Oh, Paul's sister.
Young girl.
Oh, I forgot. Paul's
We'll
sister.
get to Tracy in a bit. Yeah.
Tammy, this is what I didn't quite get. I couldn't figure out, first of all, she seems like she keeps falling in love and they don't want anything to do with her. And then you find out she was adopted. And then I couldn't quite figure out why she decided to run. Did she decided to run so he wouldn't win?
Despite him,
Despite him?
because he had taken away her girlfriend.
That
Right.
was her girlfriend.
Yeah, she was doing it, I think, to get back at her
At the
ex-girlfriend.
girlfriend. That's
Because
why
she was with her brother.
All right. And why do you think she said she tore down the posters? Why do
Well,
you
let me,
She was already,
Okay.
they already
I wanted
thought
to
she
discuss
was
that.
terrible.
Elizabeth, you want to answer that? Go right
They
ahead.
already thought she was a bad girl, so she proved it.
I think there was more to it than that, but Nancy, you have a thought?
I don't know what she
you had asked about what did we think about Tammy. I kept going back to 1999. So to have this on film and of course, there's a lot of teenage, experimentation, but this was a true lesbian relationship, or at least Tammy thought it was. And so then you have, the rejection. Then she's going with the brother. I mean, it was just a lot for a young teenage girl to deal with, I thought for Tammy. She was a very complex character, but I think we have to really put it in perspective in terms of the year.
Right.
And this was quite pushing the envelope for 1999.
Oh, yeah.
Except nobody knew, did they? I don't think anybody knew she was a lesbian.
Her parents and her brother sure didn't.
No, and I think no one in the school did. She had that stuff in her locker, and the other girl who pretended, I don't know if she was bisexual, I don't know what she was, but then she went with I don't know why she went with the boy because she liked him or because she wanted to prove to herself she wasn't a lesbian. I couldn't quite figure that out.
And I
Then she
wonder,
was trying
maybe
it out. She said, I'm just trying it out.
Right.
I wonder what effect she thought it would have to take the blame herself, so it wouldn't fall on Flick.
Yeah, I
Right. It
couldn't
wasn't
quite
because she
figure
liked,
why she
it
wanted to
wasn't because
protect
she liked
Flick.
Tracy Flick. It wasn't that. My
No.
thinking
Oh.
is she wanted to get punished. She was trying to get expelled. So she got suspended. And remember, she said she was riding her bike and narrating. She was like, this is
day
a
off.
punishment. This is a reward.
Vacation.
It's like a paid vacation, right?
She
Remember
went to
saying
go to
that?
Catholic girls' school.
That happened later when
But
she
the-
does
no, that's
and
why she
the whole
wanted-
thing come out with the vote. So she gets expelled. And
Right.
she's like, and they're going to send her, well, the parents take her out, they're going to send her to the
Yeah.
all-girls school. And she's laughing. And he
Right.
goes, you think this is funny? And she's laughing because she's like, oh my God, I'm going to be surrounded by girls. So she was thrilled. So it's
Yes.
like every time she
I
gets
bet.
punished.
Yeah,
it's a
she never
reward for
wanted
her.
to, she never wanted to be president. She was
No.
just she wanted to antagonize everyone. That's
Right.
what she wanted to do.
Right. So
That
let
was
me
the
try
whole
this.
point.
Let me try the screen share now. I hope this works.
Good.
Let's see if this works. I'm going to try something here. I
Uh-oh.
don't want that.
Uh-oh.
Board of Governors,
This.
started screen share.
By the way, Matthew Broderick left his bicycle at my sister's house.
That's funny.
It's all over the place.
All right, let's try this. I don't know if this is going to work.
You gotta get off the ad.
Can you hear it?
No,
Oh,
No, we're on the ad right now.
says I'm getting a free phone.
More power to you.
stay healthy.
All right, let me see if I can make it louder. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try.
You can see it. They're laughing at her. I remember.
No, it's not. I don't think.
We all know it doesn't matter. He gets elected president of Harvard.
Here it goes.
It's
I don't really think it's gonna change anything.
There's captions.
I'm gonna take it off. Take it off.
And everyone makes the same pathetic promises just so they can put it on their transcripts to get into college.
It's true.
Yes, that's very true.
And I don't care. And as president, I won't do anything. The only promise I will make is that if elected, I will immediately dismantle the student government.
$1.99 or
So none of us
something.
will ever have to sit
Only
here
had
in
one.
these stupid assemblies again.
The kids loved it.
Yeah,
Okay.
give it to. It's
All
huge.
right. So
Interesting.
were you able to hear it or at least read? the
Yes,
caption?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So,
Hey, Ed,
yes.
the best part of the movie was all those sex scenes.
Okay. So, with
Oh, you're
that,
just gonna blow it off?
with that speech, I'm gonna blow off that comment, yeah. With that speech that she made, when Reese Witherspoon read that in the script, she debated about whether or not she wanted to play Tammy just to be able to give that speech.
Right, I could see that. That was
Right?
good.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Now I wanted to mention, well, we wanted to talk about Tracy, and then I wanted to get to some of the reviews and some
I
of the
just want to
behind the scenes
say,
things.
what
go
Tammy
ahead.
said in that speech is like 100% true. Those student councils are just, it's just a popularity contest, and it pretty much
Yes.
doesn't do anything
Yeah.
but hurt
True.
other people's feelings.
True.
And Tracy only wanted to be president because she just had these stepping, I mean, this is a young girl with these crazy stepping stones.
Exactly.
I thought she was the most unlikable human being.
Ugh.
Tracy.
Oh,
That's why she
And
had no friends.
How about a
No
mother?
friends.
you're right.
When they thought
had
she
no
lost, her mother tells her everything she did wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
That was hysterical. Yeah.
Sad.
Her mother actually was played by Colleen Camp, who's a terrific comic actress who was kind of wasted in this movie, but she's done a lot of other stuff, and she's really a terrific comic actress. and
But
just
when
has
you
small
heard
part
the
there.
mother, you knew where the daughter came from. There was the same
course.
horrible values.
There was a scene they cut where they showed Tracy and her mother that revealed more that they were working class, real working class people. So it was a big thing to motivate Tracy. It was more sympathetic scene for Tracy, but they cut it to make her possibly less sympathetic and also not to lengthen the movie anymore. So that was
Do you
interesting.
think she
There were
was
two things
really
that got-
in love with the guy? Is it his name, Ed, the guy she slept with?
No.
You know, I wondered about that. I don't, I think
No.
it was more transactional for her, but
Find
he
it out.
was totally smitten, you
Brought him
know,
up
to comic
for all-
effect.
He might have been another stepping stone towards success for her.
Right. Well, that was the question. If you go back to the scene by the car where she chases down Matthew Broderick and says to him that, you know, we're going to be working together. I hope we can work harmoniously and productively. And then he has that stuck in his head. And he's wondering, is she coming on to him? Because it gets him obviously aroused. So that's the question. And obviously he knows, he's the only one who knows what she did to his best friend, Dave.
Yeah,
So,
it's colleague.
yeah, he has to wonder.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
And then how about the wife who sleeps with Broderick and then immediately goes and tells
What
Broderick?
to the wife? What a nasty woman.
Right, right.
You know what caught me was the last scene with the car. It was very similar to her scene, you know, that she was saying, we're going to work together. You wonder what she was actually saying. at
To the
end.
congressman from Nebraska.
Exactly. It could have been like a
Oh, yeah,
similar.
exactly.
Another
Well,
step.
it looked like she was either an intern or a page or an assistant to him already while she was at Georgetown.
Yep.
That's true. That's
The
true.
wife think Barack Obama thought that was his favorite election movie.
Yes. I'd love to get his answer as to why, but he was quoted twice for saying that.
Right.
So that was kind of
And,
interesting.
and this is a little off this, but a scene that stood out for me was when Matthew Broderick was on the phone calling, I guess, Tommy, the woman, to say, what, you know, where are you, whatever. He was at the school and it was juxtaposed. He was right behind the bathroom and you saw the 3 urinals. Now, I don't understand, was that supposed to be symbolic that he was going down the tubes or something? I don't know.
Absolutely.
just
Oh,
saw the
absolutely.
three
His life was in
urinals
the
without
toilet
the
at that
phone.
point. His life was in the toilet, and that was a
That's right.
symbolic showing
That
up.
was what they
Absolutely.
did. Yeah,
Yep.
interesting.
He forgot to flush.
Yeah, he forgot.
But the first words in the beginning, it says you can't interfere with destiny.
Can't what?
Very beginning,
Hey,
it
Ed,
tells you what's going to happen.
Yeah,
What does
The
it
first
say?
couple of words.
Yes, Al?
here's a
Ed,
his
how
life went
old
from
was
bad to
Reese
worse.
Witherspoon in the movie?
Baby.
She's a baby.
Yeah.
let me
Well,
think.
it's 20 years ago.
20.
25
He
Yeah.
was a cutie.
She was in her
Yeah.
early 20s, like 21 or 2, I think.
Oh,
How old is she now?
boy, she didn't look it.
Well,
made her
let's add.
Cool kid.
Wait,
Yeah?
I'm gonna say, oh,
He's been 21.
Ed, what did you say? That was Barack Obama's favorite movie?
Favorite political movie, yes.
Oh, political. Wow, that's
Really?
that's shocking.
I agree.
Now, the other thing is,
Rebecca.
when the director, and he told that to Alexander
hold a
Payne when he
little
met
bit
him.
Please
And
don't.
Alexander Payne said that when he met Hillary Clinton, she said so many people said that the Tracy Flick character reminded her of Hillary.
Huh.
oh, wow.
Oh.
That makes it more than Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Boy, that is
But
Yes.
Hillary was not like saying it in a very happy way, according to the director.
right.
She was born in 1976, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was 23.
23,
Right.
yeah.
Well,
And she-
22 when she made 21 and 22 when she made the movie.
Right.
What
That-
a great actress she is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
she's
she's
great.
terrific.
played
Yeah,
that
I'll
part.
read some of the critics' notes on her in a minute. But so let me just share you some of the comments from the critics. Newsweek, David Anson, who was the main critic of Newsweek for many years. The comedy may not resonate as deeply as the well-named Payne intends, but between Witherspoon's exuberant solipsism and Broderick's talent for absorbing massive humiliation, the chuckles keep coming like poisoned darts. I thought that was a pretty succinct review. In NME, a British publication, Nick Levine wrote this just last year. It remains scarily relevant and on the nose. In TV Guide, when it came out, the critic Maitland McDonough wrote, surprise, an intelligent, well-written high school story that offers some real ideas to chew on rather than simply wallowing in nubile flesh. And Associated Press, Election at first has the feel of a simple work, but don't let that fool you. It's a complex, deep tale. And then interestingly enough, and kind of prescient actually, the E-film critic Scott Weinberg said, it's too smart for mass appeal, one of this year's best. And again, it did not do well at the box office in spite of terrific reviews.
Amazing.
Great movie.
I thought
Yeah.
you could,
Go
I
ahead.
could watch that movie over and over again because the characters were very
Yeah,
complex,
they were,
more
yeah.
like real humans.
Payne said he tried making all the characters at least somewhat sympathetic, and he even felt sorry for Tracy Flick at a few points in the movie.
Mhm.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, in movie Metropolis, John Puccio wrote, maybe its only real fault is that it's a little too close to the truth to be as funny as it could be. I thought that was a good comment. And then interestingly enough, there were a couple of negative reviews, not many, but a couple. So Chicago Reader had a negative review when it first came out. Oh, actually, no, it was more recent. The treatment of this, Lisa Alspector wrote, the treatment of this touchy material is impressive, neither gratuitous nor mincing, but this 1999 satirical comedy doesn't really go anywhere. I don't get that comment at all. I just don't. But now also in Chicago Reader, J.R. Jones in September of 2005 wrote, quote, an instant classic. Alexander Payne's 1999 high school comedy seems even more scathing now that we're losing control with our own election machinery.
That's right. I think so too.
Yep.
I agree.
Now, here's an interesting analogy that I hadn't thought of, but it's interesting. Time Out wrote, this remarkable film may be set in high school, but its satirical take on moral corruption, political chicanery, adultery, and seduction is anything but juvenile. And here's the interesting comment. There's more than a whiff of Monica Lewinsky about Ms. Flick.
Oh,
With her clipped diction, prim demeanor, and blinkered ability to see only her side of every issue, she makes a frighteningly credible proto-despot. This may not be politically correct, but as a microcosm of the malaise creeping through Western democracies, the apathy, vote rigging, and character assassination manifest at Carver High serve all too well. I thought that was a pretty sharp comment.
why do you
Wow,
think?
that's a little.
Why do you think that Matthew Broderick changed the election? Could he not stand to have Tracy win?
That was it. He was all set to accept the fate, and then he looked out the window and saw her jumping around, and it bothered him on two levels. First, he saw the selfishness, or as he perceived it, her gloating and celebrating, but also he said she was spying.
Right, exactly.
And the two things bothered him on top of all the other stuff she did, killing his poor friend's career and his
Right,
marriage,
right,
and
right.
all the other stuff she did that bothered him, that just was like the final straw. That pushed
Right.
him over the edge. So he's like, I can't let her
Right.
win. I got to sabotage this.
And I know he
So-
could,
But
he could not work with her. She made that, he did not want to
But
work with her.
It's,
Well,
and
he
I
also was
think-
looking at the
I
future.
think
Paul-
there's an
He was the
approach
teacher and he's
avoidance
looking at
going
what
on.
she's going to become in the future. He didn't want to put her
Right.
on the path, just easing the runway for her right up,
Right.
to the top. He
Right.
wanted to give her at
Mhm.
least one setback, and he
But
felt
if
that
Paul-
was better for society. I think in his
If
narration.
Paul
said it.
voted for her, if he voted for himself, it would have been a tie.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But do you actually remember who had the most
We-
votes? They just made it almost a throwaway line.
yeah.
Mhm.
The
Tammy had the
janitor
most
did him in.
votes. Did you catch that?
The
Tammy had
janitor
the
did
most
him in.
votes,
Well, they got rid of her.
but they eliminated all her votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she had the most
Well,
votes.
Tammy had the most votes because she spoke the truth to them. Those
Mm-hmm.
students in that school, when she made that speech, they thought, you're exactly right. This whole thing is a sham.
Joke,
Right.
yeah.
Right, exactly.
You can be sympathetic to Tammy too, Tracy too, because she made so many goals for herself. It's like you can't possibly keep succeeding. She kept making it harder and harder for herself to
Right.
feel good about herself.
Yeah. Yeah, and you saw
Very
she really did
ambitious.
have no friends. I mean, even at college,
Yeah,
she
right.
thought she
Sure.
would.
Even in college, when she said, oh, I'm
Yeah,
gonna go to
very
Georgetown.
ambitious.
But then she started yelling at him.
Right.
Right, right. She had
So
no
the
friends.
Washington Post called it the satire of the season, a hilarious razor-sharp indictment of the American dream. And now I've got some things behind the scenes that are kind of cool.
That's a movie.
So when it didn't do well at the box office, the filmmakers figured that Paramount didn't know how to market the movie. Well, try to remember, it's got mostly high school students, but it was rated R.
Right.
Most of the high school students aren't old enough to get in to see it without an adult accompanying them.
Right.
So from a
Okay.
marketing standpoint, it was a bit of a challenge, no question. But it did give Reese Witherspoon her first Golden Globe nomination. And it won, it had an adapted screenplay Oscar nomination as well. Now, let's see. So, okay. So Tom Perrotta, the guy who wrote the original book, told Huffington Post the inspiration for the novel, again, I'm sorry, it was published in 98. It was published in 98, not 88. Somewhere else it said 88. But it came during the 92 election when Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and Bush vied to become the most powerful person in the world. I was unemployed and got caught up in that race. When it was over, I just felt a little bit bereft. I thought I wanted to write a political novel, but I don't know anything about politics that anybody else doesn't know. Now, Alexander Payne never wanted to write or direct a high school movie until he read this book. So the producers of the movie in 98 gave Payne a copy of the manuscript for it in 96. They got it early, and he said he didn't read it for a long time. And he goes, there were a lot of high school movies at the time. I couldn't be less interested in making a high school movie. And then finally I read it and I liked it. It was set in a high school, but it wasn't a high school story per se. Also, what attracted me was the formal exercise of doing a movie with multiple points of view and multiple voiceovers. And I already mentioned to you about Reese Witherspoon kind of wishing she could play Tammy after she saw that speech. She said, that speech alone made me want to play Tammy. So I was terribly conflicted. I didn't know if I wanted to play Tammy or Tracy. Now, the role that Matthew Broderick had of Mr. McAllister, two actors, pretty high profile, were considered ahead of him. Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise.
Wow.
Payne-
Great.
Matthew
Thomas
Broderick.
Payne-
is good.
Right. Thomas Payne told Huffington Post that Paramount wanted him to cast one of the Toms for the teacher role. The one actor we could all agree upon ultimately was Matthew Broderick, he said. I met with him and he was only too happy to do the part, and I'm so glad he did. I never thought Tom Cruise would have been right for the part. Tom Hanks is a wonderful actor, but I knew at the time there was no way in hell he would take the part. It just felt right that we eventually got to Matthew Broderick.
I thought he was perfect.
Now, Chris Klein, when he got the part of Metzler, Paul Metzler. Oh, and I have where's my picture? I got to show you the picture.
Such an old.
Come on, I got a Paul Metzler picture here. Here it is. All right, hopefully you'll be able to see this. It's going to be a little small, but I'll try. Can you see the poster?
Yeah.
Paul
Yeah.
Metzler, you Betzler. I love it. It just kind of fit. So anyway, he read the script, but turned it down because of a certain scene he thought would upset his grandmother. And he said, quote, "I can't have my grandma see me getting a blowjob," he told the director. And the director laughed and said, "Okay, kid, listen, we'll take care of it. Just come and do the movie. Just trust me." All right, I thought that was great. Now, the
You played it.
Omaha Public School superintendent was horrified by the script. So the director had a difficult time finding a school that would allow him to film it. He said, "I toured almost every high school in Omaha and selected one and was forbidden to shoot there because the superintendent of Omaha schools asked to read the script and was horrified by it."
Yeah, of course.
So he forbade me using any high school in the Oklahoma public school system because he said he would
That's
never have
funny.
a student and a teacher having an affair and some of the immoral behavior he didn't want associated. So he had to go outside
Amazing.
the school district to Papillon, Nebraska to get it done.
Ed,
Yep.
so my son loves movies, and I said, "Did you see Election?" He said, "Oh yeah, sure." He said, "When I was 25, it was a cult movie. Everybody watched it."
Oh.
You know, but
About
but he wasn't high school age. He was beyond that, and I really thought it was quite something for high school for that time. For
Right.
99, I was kind of shocked, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
As Ed said, high school kids could not go see it. It was
Right.
hard.
Right. So right.
Yeah. Except the seniors could.
You see,
Now in Huffington Post did an oral history of the movie, and the novelist, Tom Perrotta, explained that in the book versus the movie, he said, "My Tracy is a little bit more of a sexual manipulator, and Reese Witherspoon's Tracy is more of a go-getter who's a little bit over her head when it comes to sexual matters." It ultimately was a good change for the movie. Paramount, of course, was skeptical about making it. They were trying to get it to be PG-13, but that didn't happen. Election also
Right,
helped
yeah.
inspire Glee. You remember the TV show Glee?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. loved it.
Glee's co-creator, Ryan Murphy, told Deadline.com,
Love
"To
that
me, the
movie.
inspiration and Brad's inspiration and Ian's inspiration was always Election. It had a really strong student and teacher story, which was a satire about ambition. Our version was a little bit more heartfelt about teachers and the arts, but that's how it started off."
Mhm.
And then, of course, Reese Witherspoon said, "A lot of the women I've met in politics say everyone always compares me to Tracy Flick. And I think, isn't that wonderful in some regards? And then in other regards, why is there only one female political archetype? It was 15 years ago this interview happened, and we have no other really notable women. I guess now we have Veep, which is exciting and which I love." When Witherspoon met Hillary Clinton, she told her, "Everybody talks to me about Tracy Flick and Election." Let's see.
Right over,
Oh, so
Bob,
Tra-
so
so
can see.
Reese Witherspoon said after this movie, she couldn't get jobs for a year because people thought I was that crazy and angry and controlling and strange. But yeah, I'm not. Now,
Yeah.
Matthew
But she did-
Broderick almost got in trouble with the White House. Do you remember the scene right at the end of the movie? He throws the Pepsi. If you notice, it was
Yes.
Pepsi, not Coke. Tracy was talking about, Coke being number one, and he kept drinking Pepsi. But at the
Right.
end, he throws a Pepsi at the limo and runs
Right.
away. He was running towards the White House.
Yeah.
Well, he said, "We did it. I ran into this park across the street from the White House." And Alexander, the director, said, "Just keep running. I'll film it. And maybe that would be a funny ending, just to have this guy running into a park scared. But just run as far as you can." Broderick kept running, but found himself near the White House.
Oh,
I
that's
started
funny.
to notice homeless guys and dog walkers starting to take notice of me and come toward me because there's lots of Secret Service in this park who did not like this man running full throttle toward the White House. I think they thought I was going to throw myself at the building.
but
Now, the last piece I have here, well, a
Yeah.
couple more. Matthew Broderick, I'm sorry, the election originally had an alternate ending. Oh, 1 second, we got Amy here. Okay. It had an
You get
alternate
sick,
ending
Robert.
where there was a reuniting of Tracy and Mr. McAllister at a car dealership job where Matthew Broderick's Mr. McAllister was playing a used car dealer. And he says to her, "Seems like I'm the last person in the world you want to see before going off to college. Are you trying to humiliate me?" She drives him to her place. He apologizes and he signs her yearbook. This was a much softer ending than the one where Mr. McAllister, in a fit of jealous rage, throws a drink at Tracy's limo. test audiences didn't connect with the drama-free ending. So they went with the this ending that we saw. The movie mined the novel for more outrageous and subversive humor, the director told Huffington Post. I think the audience felt, and we the filmmakers, that the rather melancholy ending did not seem totally in keeping with the very funny subversive movie which preceded it. So they rewrote the ending and filmed it in December of '98, a few months before it was released. So now 20 years after the movie hit theaters, moviephone.com did a thing, you know, what could have made this film and helped launch Reese Witherspoon, what could have made it such a big deal? So, okay, Matthew Broderick's character, Jim, if you notice his diet deteriorates along with his behavior. In the beginning of the movie, he's shown eating a salad, you see him working out. By the end, he's gorging on pie and milkshakes. The part Reese Witherspoon got, they almost gave it to Melissa Joan Hart. And let's see. They had a hard time getting extras for the movie, even using high school students. So what they did was where would I have it? Hold on one second. Yeah, there weren't enough extras to fill the scene, so the director had to have them keep shifting around, so it looked like there were a lot more than there were actually there. It's a trick that's been used in other films, but they'd film different parts of the auditorium with the kids filled in that area and the rest of it's pretty empty, but you don't see that part.
You know, it also was a little scary, I think, for the men in the movie and for anyone watching it at that time, seeing a woman come up the ranks, you know, and possibly, you know, she kept climbing and climbing, which kind of like mirrors still, will there ever be a woman president? And there's a fear of that. And I think that had the rudiments of that fear.
That's a really good point. I didn't see that Matthew Broderick was trying to repress her because she was a female. But you can make that argument.
It was.
But to me, it was more because of her go-getter nature and her how she was stepping on people
obnoxious
to get there.
Yeah.
Right. She was obnoxious.
Obnoxious.
It had
But
more to
that-
do with
you
her
can make
first.
that point too, Marcia. I see that.
You know,
And actually, that's all she was, because she had no friends.
Right.
So do you think if that were
And
a
she
male
also-
playing her part,
Yeah.
do you think if a male played her part, people would have thought he was obnoxious?
Yes.
Yeah.
if they had
I think it was written that way on purpose. And even her behavior, the way she walked, the way, you know, like, I don't know if you saw the scene where she gets in Paul's face when who put you up to it about running? She gets right in his face. Who put you up to it? You didn't do this yourself. Who put you up to it?
But
She's
you know,
like,
she
I'm not
made the
mad. I'm not
comment.
mad, you know.
Yeah. And she made a comment. She said everything was fine with that relationship with his friend until he got mushy. You know, she doesn't have the ability to feel or to connect.
Right. She's
So
just
it was, you know, it was
driven.
like, exactly. It
Right.
meant nothing to
You're
her.
right. That was the word she used.
Nothing for
mushy.
her, but
You're
it
right.
meant something to
Interesting.
him.
Right.
He
A
was
lot to it.
serious about
Ruined his
her.
life.
Yeah, he
How
was.
much
I
somebody
guess
think
so.
women's position in life was way different, and her trying to get higher.
Come here. Everybody's
I
in.
don't know. There was resistance to her becoming more important, more powerful, because she was a woman then, obviously a female.
Couple other little hidden things in the movie. Remember when Paul gets called to the principal's office so they can tell him that he really lost the election? So he was in Spanish class and they were conjugating the verb, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, perder, but it means to lose, which I didn't know. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Thora Birch was originally cast as Tammy Metzler, but she quit a few days into filming because she had friction with the director of the film. The director snuck a hidden message into one of the newspaper articles, which I saw when I saw it last night again. It was very quick. It complains about the difficulty in writing fake newspaper copy and directs viewers to watch Citizen Ruth. There's a little quick headline. Someone's reading a newspaper and it says Citizen Ruth. So it was interesting. Now the scene where Matthew Broderick is, he stays all night outside waiting for his friend's wife, Dave's wife.
Right.
And he goes out and urinates on the tree. He really did urinate.
Like he did. I said to Al, I said he really is doing that.
Yep. that was legit. It said it caught a lot of people off guard, but he really.
Ed, I have a question about him, though. I think he created his own demise by just crunching up the paper, throwing it in the trash can. And I said to Al, I said, if he doesn't burn that or shred it,
Right,
Right.
I said,
or put it in his pocket.
yeah, I said he either could have put it in his pocket or in his pants,
That's what I
or
would
And
have.
nobody would have found
Yeah.
out.
but
Right.
But
it
you
was almost like
remember-
I turned to him. I said, "That's going to be his demise." I mean,
Yeah.
I
If you
knew it
remember, who
from when
turned
it
him
was
in?
just left in the basket.
It was
It
only
was-
a literal
it
piece
was
of
the
paper he
maintenance
could have
guy.
eaten it.
The janitor turned him
Right.
in
And you remember
Right,
why?
exactly.
because he
spilled the
dropped
stuff on
something in the
floor.
lunchroom. He made a mess.
Why the janitor
Right.
let him?
Yeah,
He left it on the floor.
but it was so stupid of him. I mean,
Right.
But at the end, he was happier anyway. He was happier doing the museum thing. He was happier not being with his wife. They
Yeah,
said
he had a girlfriend. It worked out.
he was happy as a lark in that new job, and he
Right.
wasn't that happy as a teacher.
no,
Although that
no, he liked
apartment,
being a teacher,
He
but he
liked
didn't
being a
like his
teacher.
life.
Right.
right.
And the other
Um,
thing is, don't you think they made Paul, the is that his name, Paul, the other kid who ran for office? Is his name? Paul?
Quarterback.
The
Paul.
quarterback. I mean, how stereotypical. The guy was like not the brightest bulb on the, he was like happy with everything. I don't know if I should vote for myself.
Yeah.
Very stereotypical football player.
Right. But he was also a nice guy. You saw he
Yeah.
cared
Very
about
nice.
his sister.
Yeah, he was a
Right.
nice person in the movie, I thought.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then, now we were talking about the apples before. Some of the apples in the film were tied to branches. You remember the scene where Matthew Broderick gets stung?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
had-
how did
in
they
the
do that?
foreground,
Looked
there
like
was-
he
there were
really
some
was.
apples, and they were tied onto that tree because they weren't really there.
Oh,
And I told you about
Made it
Tammy
look
actually
real.
really won the election with the disregarded votes. It was a throwaway line, but they said, well, when you got to take away the disregarded votes, and there were 289, and whoever won had like 256. So Tammy actually really was the winner. Okay. Some of the classrooms actually had classes going on in session. Okay, and that's about it. Oh, and then I have one more thing I want to read, then we can wrap up. I'm just about done. Did you want to say something, Rebecca?
No, I just want to
One
say
thing.
the 2 boys that counted the votes knew that they counted right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they knew that something was fishy and something was up because they
Well, the
knew.
one kid spat on his car at the end. If you saw, they came to a
Right,
stoplight
as he
together.
drove by.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about the fact that the woman he had the little affair with, his friend's wife, she kind of came on to him,
Oh, yeah.
and then she went running
Boy,
to
what a
his
bitch.
wife.
Well, and then when she does talk to him, she said, "You took advantage of me," and she hangs up on him.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, but she
She's like, "I took
sort of
advantage
came
of
on
you,"
to
and she
him.
hangs up on him.
he definitely came on
Oh,
to him.
yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Elizabeth, sure, go ahead.
yeah, but
Reese Witherspoon recommends books for us to read. And I always find it such an odd thing. I can understand Oprah, but I can never understand Reese Witherspoon is
But
telling
she
me
picks
what books to
really
read.
good books.
Well, remember, she's a Stanford grad.
But I'm always so amazed that it's Reese Witherspoon.
Well, like I said, Stanford grad, she's a bright girl.
They knew how many votes had been cast, and when you added the 2 without those 2 votes in it,
It's
they were short.
Yeah.
They did not add up to the number of votes that had been cast.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, I have the last words I'm going to leave it to Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times, who wrote when this originally came out. And I'm going to just read part of it. I remember students like Tracy Flick, the know-it-all who always has her hand in the air while the teacher desperately looks for someone else to call on. She's the subject of Election, a wicked satire about an election for student government president, a post Tracy wants to win to go along with her collection of every other prize in school. What sets this film aside from all the other recent high school movies is that it doesn't limit itself to the worldview of teenagers, but sees Tracy mostly through the eyes of a teacher who has had more than enough of her. Tracy is embodied by Reese Witherspoon. She hits her full stride in Election as an aggressive, manipulated vixen who informs a teacher she hopes they can work together, quote, harmoniously, unquote, in the coming school year. The teacher is Matthew Broderick, the kind of man who turns up for an adulterous liaison and succeeds only in getting a bee sting on his eyelid. He thinks he knows what she means about harmoniously, since last year she seduced a faculty member who was one of his best friends. Much as McAllister detests her, he also lusts after her. Talking another student into running against her is his version of a cold shower. What is Tracy Flick's platform? That she should win simply because she is the school's self-designated winner? When a candidate turns up on election day having baked 480 customized cupcakes for the voters, doesn't she seem kind of inevitable? For Jim McAllister, the Tracy Flicks have to be stopped before they do damage to themselves and others. She is always perfectly dressed and groomed and is usually able to conceal her hot temper behind a facade of maddening cheerfulness. So, sorry, something just came on my screen that I'd love to get rid of. Okay. But she is ruthless. She reminds me of a saying attributed to David Merrick. It's not enough for me to win. My enemies must lose. The story, based on a novel by Tom Perrotta, shows McAllister as a dedicated teacher simply steamrolled by Tracy Flick. He narrates the film in a tone balance between wonder and horror, as Broderick's performance does a good job of keeping that balance. Whatever else, he is fascinated by the phenomenon of Tracy Flick. Election makes the useful observation that although troublemakers cause problems for teachers, it's the compulsive overachievers who can drive them mad. Alexander Payne is a director whose satire is omnidirectional. He doesn't choose an easy target and march on it. He stands in the middle of his story and attacks on all directions. Now, here is a movie that is not simply about an obnoxious student, but also about an imperfect teacher, a lockstep administration, and a student body that is mostly just marking time until it can go out into the world and occupy valuable space. The movie is not mean-spirited about any of its characters. I kind of like Tracy Flick some of the time and even felt a little sorry for her. Payne doesn't enjoy easy targets and cheap shots. What he's aiming for, I think, is a parable for elections in general, in which the voters have to choose from among the kinds of people who have been running for office ever since high school.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good line.
I thought that was a great line. I thought that was a good way to end it. Anyone else have any last comments?
I thought it was a very good pick.
Good pick, Ed.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
Very good pick.
All right. Anyone who didn't like it want to give a comment?
Well, Al, I have a comment to make for Al.
Okay.
As he was watching it, as a former high school biology teacher and biology teacher at Haverford College, so he had taught for 40 years, he kept on saying, I never met anybody who had an affair with a student. There was a part of him that was so angry because of the way it showed teachers, and he never met anybody like that. And
the easiest way to get fired.
Yeah, I mean, he just was a little bit, you know.
That was worse than rigging a ballot.
Yeah, he just was really like, that doesn't really happen. I'm sure it does. We know there's many cases.
That's pretty naive.
It never did.
Yeah,
but
that's
even
pretty
the female
naive for a
teachers who
teacher.
seduce the male students. I mean, it does happen, but what he said is that's not, you know, that upset
Well,
me.
again, it's a satire. It is a satire. You got to look at it.
It just looked bad.
Yeah, Ed, I will say one thing. I commented on when we first started that I did not like the movie. I thought it was very silly. And I confess that the discussion has given it far more meaning and the profundity has come out of it. So it in a different light. Thank you all for your comments.
Well done.
Her mind to silliness.
But I think it's ironic. It's not just empty silliness. So it was quite.
Let's see you next time.
All right. So I'm off next month and we'll come back in October. I'll let everybody vote and I'll put some nominations up in the beginning of October when I see what's out there.
Sounds great.
On vacation.
Hi, Amy.
It was a good discussion.
Okay, stay well, everybody.
Bye.
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 Good night.
Bye.
We
Good
give
night.
you a-
Great
we
seeing
give you a
everybody.
vacation?
Bye, hon.
How do you like that?
Bye.
See you, Ed.
All right.
We'll
bye.
Rebecca, I
miss
love
it.
your hair. Rebecca,
Bye,
I love your
Ed.
hair.
You talking to
Bigger
me?
though.
Yeah, I love your
Oh,
hair.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah,